Hello, everyone, and welcome to On the Couch, the podcast where we bring you intimate, thought-provoking conversations with fascinating individuals from all corners of life. I'm your host, Dr. Diamond, along with my co-hosts, and each episode will dive deep into the minds and hearts of our guests, uncovering the experiences and stories that shape their lives. From heartfelt personal journeys to groundbreaking ideas, On the Couch offers a unique space to explore it all. So, sit back, relax, and join us for a journey of discovery, connection, and inspiration. Welcome to the couch, and let's go.
Good morning. Welcome to On the Couch. We're excited to have you here with us this morning. We are looking forward to we actually have one guest coming on this morning, possibly two. The topic today is Unbroken, a survivor's story. So what we're going to be talking about today is human trafficking and also how to look for the warning signs, because again, this affects the Black and Brown community. We're getting a chance to talk with Angela Thorne. We're just very excited about her coming on, speaking with us today. And we're hoping to have our second guest, who's Vanessa Burgess, coming on today as well. And she educates about sexual abuse and also human trafficking. So before we even get into our topic this morning, I'm going to bring on my co-hosts today, Mark Lee and Toya. So they're waiting in the wings to get in, and we're going to have, our basic conversations that we normally have is what the climate is looking like today in today's society. So let me bring them on, and we're going to get started. Good morning, you two. How's everything going?
Good
Doing
morning,
well,
good
keeping
morning,
busy.
beautiful people.
Doing well, keep it busy. I know we all are. Before we get into our, guests that are coming on, I want to talk about real quickly the climate of what is happening today. It seems to be a lot going on with the removal of the Department of Education. There is removal of, actually implementing segregation again. So there's a lot going on here. I would love to hear your point of views, or what's the mumbling going on around you? What have you heard?
Well, if I could just jump in there real quickly, Dr. Diamond and everything, it's becoming just a total mess. I was watching earlier today where they're not just talking about dismantling the education department, but they're talking about giving it to departments that don't make any sense to me. I understand that our current leader, or the leader of the country, then I'm not even going to call him my leader because he's not my leader at all, but that he wants to sit there and put the education department divided into two departments. So he wants part of it to be handled by the SBA, the Small Business Administration, and they got enough problems trying to do their own stuff. And we know that they even had problems even administering PPP loans and all along those lines. So I'm trying to figure out how they're going to do a better job with the student loans. So I was reading online, and some people are like, I didn't sign to them to be running my loans and everything. So as far as I'm concerned, those loans are null and void. And I think that those people may have a valid point and all along those lines. And then he wants to turn some of the other part of the administration of what is the student loans over to Health and Human Services, which we know is led by RFK Jr., and he ain't got much sense either. So I'm just concerned about where some of these things are going. We got some folks that are, the insane are running the asylum. So it doesn't make any sense to me.
It doesn't. It doesn't at all. I'm
fearful
of where we're going. Of course, we're regressing, because if you think about their motto is to make America great again. What period are we talking about here? What are we talking about? When was America great at all? If we really want to tell the truth, it wasn't great for Black people, brown people, was not even great for Asian people. When was it great? So that's my question. If I was able to even speak to one of them, what are they referring to? What time period? Because we are regressing. When you're talking about segregation now, having separate bathrooms, we're going backwards.
Yes, we are. And I just, was privileged to be able to have a grandmother that lived in Mississippi, Prentice, Mississippi. And I would go there every summer. And I think about that. And I mentioned that in a previous case. Folks don't know what that means. When a Black person says, ma'am or sir, that means that's our way of pulling it in because we're being sarcastic. So now when you hear that, that's a conditioning that we did not have to do. And now you're going backwards. So for me, when does the world allow us to break laws that we voted on? Let's stick to the black and white. If we voted for it, why are we going back to that Jim Crow South days? It does not make any sense. And for folks, all the distractions that continue to come up, this is what's really going on. If you have to lead a department, you should have a history. Where's the vita? It explains the qualifications of that individual to be able to lead. So right now, this is not a TV show. This is our livelihood. Mm-hmm. So right now, we all need to wake up and pay attention. And again, some of this stuff that's being put out, it's not in the headlines, but we'll see once it's done. So I'm at this point of we have to let go and let God and pray. My pastor said the other week is that the only person that can save us is our Heavenly Father. And the churches are going to be full again. And I'm a very spiritual person to understand that what we are seeing does not make any sense. So we all need to wake up. So thank you, April, for, talking about the climate so that people who are watching the reels on their phones and not paying to what's going on in our home, our home. So this is a reality. So we all need to wake up. And we do. Continue to keep America the way it is, to prosper, not to go back to where it only affected people that look like us, the black and brown people.
Yeah,
exactly.
Speaking of waking up, and you were saying that really quickly, and I did hear that, and that was very scary. This fact that, and I think it's in the federal offices that they're talking about that they're going to allow segregation back makes no sense to me. And apparently that was an executive order recently as well. So if you want to divide around orientation and definitely even around race, it's going to be perfectly fine according to this Trump government that we have and all along those lines. So when I heard that, I was going apparently these people really do want us to go back to the 50s and even probably back further than that, maybe even back to like slavery days, because they've got rid of some mentions of some very powerful figures like Medgar Evers and others that were there at Arlington Cemetery, but they're not even allowed to have that presence in terms of the memories of them in those kind of areas. And I think that they even got rid of the Black Lives mural there in DC. So some of these things are just downright scary what they are doing. And it's not, it's one thing when you deal with the racists that try to hide what they're doing, but these folks are just being blatant and don't even care that you can see what's going on directly in front of you, because we know that Elon Musk came from apartheid South Africa, and I think he's trying to almost take us back down the road of his country and everything along those lines. So.
Yeah, and it's subtle changes. Did you guys notice that our flag is no longer posted on the government websites? Have you looked in the little corner, the little flag?
No, I haven't even paid any attention to that.
No, just look at the flag. I had posted something like that a couple months ago, but when you get time, look at the flag that's there. It's not the one that has the states. No, just look.
Wow.
Subtle changes to watch.
There are things that I, as what they consider to be woke. White people don't understand what that means, that terminology means. They're so hell-bent on trying to figure out who we are that they're not figuring out or understanding what this terminology means. For us is to just have the ability to be aware of who we are and where we are going. And that's all it is. It's just those simple things. When you have, confusion about the critical race theory, again, not understanding that you're eliminating history, which you're removing part of who we are or our ancestors and not letting us connect. So the rest of us have to go about our business and connect, which means we are responsible for going back, educating ourselves and educating others. And that's what makes us aware of what's going on. When you said, we need to wake up, we do need to wake up, but waking up also means we have to work together as a unit. Now, here's the thing. You all may have a different opinion, but I was thinking about this because I was listening to this one lady on Facebook, and she was talking about the separation. That is not going to destroy us if you really think about it. It actually is something we have done before. This is not something new for us. You have to remember, we survived Tulsa and Oak Creek and all of these different places that we were able to establish. Without the black dollar, what will happen? They're not thinking that way. They're thinking that they're harming us. How about we make a way out of no way? Think about it. If you grew up not having a lot, your grandmother, your mother, father, they made a way out of no way. And that is a traditional type of behavior that helps us go from one generation to the next. So you may feel that you might be poor, but some people don't even know that because their parents made it so oblivious to them that they didn't even know that they were growing up in that way. So to me, it may be beneficial for us, and maybe we will come together better versus where we are now. I don't know. What's your opinion on that? Separation, separate but equal.
Well, you mentioned that and everything, and along those same lines and in that same space, let's look at the Target boycott. The Target boycott is very effective and all along those lines and everything like that. But if you look at how effective it is, it's already impacting Target. Target was hoping to have a big boost on Easter, which is coming up very shortly, and it's already being impacted by Target's this boycott. It was led by some of our church groups and everything like that. And I think that Nestle and some of the other big corporations are also being impacted as well. As a matter of fact, they're seeing some severe drops in their prices because they decided to abandon DEI, some of these organizations. So we gave a little bit of a pushback, and definitely Amazon and Walmart are even being targeted as well. So I think Nestle and Target are the ones that are currently in effect, but Amazon and Walmart are coming soon as well. So definitely, if you look at this, we can impact by doing these economic boycotts and definitely kind of like taking control back. And even what you were saying earlier about us having power and even during segregated times, that's actually when the Black Wall Streets were very much flourishing. As you know, I'm a historian here at Hayti, and that's part of what we talk about is that we literally, believe this or not, we were talking earlier about personal lives and all along those lines, and we used to make our own mattresses. So we actually had folks in our own community that were making our mattresses in addition to our houses and our suits and everything like that. And then we started going to one needing a Serta. I'm going like, no, we needed to have back when we were making our own.
That's right. That's right.
And I want to add to that. Can you just add to that? I do taxes on the side, and one thing that I've noticed is people don't realize the educational credits. As you're talking about the educational system, there used to be what you call the American Learning Credit, American Hope, and it would be $2,500. So now I'm doing folks' taxes. They're only getting a portion of that. I'm not understanding why the software has changed it. So if the person paid to the school and then they put scholarships on the side, that's lowering it. Then you're looking at the amount of income. If you're over 80,000, if you're et cetera, et cetera. These are things that helped. So if it's obsolete, I'm paying for school because you're thinking you're going to get a kickback. You don't. That's one thing. Second thing is for our black and brown people, we pay for things outright, right? What other races do, they finance, they use their credit. Because how are you able to live on a fixed income for a 30-day period? So this is something that I've been vetting for myself, because if I have to go on disability, I get one check a month. Anything that I add would increase my savings. But what does a person of color do? Oh, I see something, let me just buy it. I'm gonna buy a car outright, right? It's gonna depreciate its value. Then if you have gap insurance, think about it. Who came up with gap insurance, right? If I don't pay for that, regardless, if I didn't pay it, this insurance is going to pay that 100%. But if a person goes and spends that, it's a risk. Now, if we continue to retain our resources, we won't be cash poor. Think about it. Yeah. I worked at welfare earlier in my career. There was someone who made in Hillsborough, 300-something thousand. Once the accountant was done, it was 28,000. I had to issue Medicaid for that individual, right? Then their car wasn't owned, it was leased. They're able to get stuff that we can't because we go in, we use our credit. So I just want to just think about that. And since we're talking about how things are changing and how we have to retain our resources, we need to save our money for the rainy day. Because if we don't, that's why we're cash poor. So I just wanted to say that to you, to put this out into the airwaves. Retain your income. Put some money under your mattress or where you're going to do it. Because remember when COVID happened and we weren't unable to shop, if you didn't have cash, you had to leave your items in the store. So I'm just saying this because it was on my spirit to say that. Because right now, if everything is changing overall, these are one things that we need to put in our mind, plant that seed of saving. Beans and rice, greens, things like that. But we're going out, oh, I want lobster, I want this. Look at the eggs, what they're charging for the eggs. We need to get back to the basics. So I just wanted to say that since we were talking about change and all of that, and changing our framework, our mind, to keep our resources together.
Speaking of getting back to the base,
I would not notice unless I've seen it with my eyes this year.
Yeah,
and I didn't understand. Because I went to the IRS website and there was no changes listed. How is that so?
None changes listed. Now they're talking about getting rid of the pennies and everything like that. I was actually laughing as you were talking to Miss Toya and everything, because I remember going in when my grandmother was living and going to mom's mom, and you literally were sitting there doing that whole splitting the peas and doing all that other stuff that we have folks that are young don't know how to even do that. But if you came down to the South at all, you oftentimes had to do that cooking and even some of that cooking preparations and everything.
Canning,
like
freezing.
Yeah. But we're going to have to go back to that because it's going to be hell for us. It's going to be hell, but actually it's not going to be hell for us. We know how to survive. That's why I said, even if they go back to what they think is when America was great again, the only difference is Black people are not going to sit around and let you beat them. This generation is very different, and we are the generation that is even after our grandparents. Okay. A lot of them, they did have fighters back then that would stand up and fight. Our generation, we probably tussled with a lot of people. Then this generation behind us, which is our children, they're not standing for it. Okay. They're just not. They're not dealing with it. They don't want to, and they're not going to allow anybody to harm them. Then on top of it, you still have the gang activity that is not as widespread as we hear about it, but they exist in these hoods. And what's going to happen with these gang members now, they're going to unite because they see one common enemy. All right. And that's what's going to get ready to happen. These are the realities of what's coming because they don't understand what they're getting ready to do. No one is going to lay down for you these people in the White House. No one's going to lay down for these guys. And the cabinet that they have is white. And the guys, the sprinkle of color that they do have is these people don't know who they are. They really don't. They have no clue of who they are, to the point where you can tell somebody, oh, I love you. I love you. I couldn't believe Tim Scott did that. I just could not believe it. And just to watch it, I said, what is wrong with this guy? Like, what do you not see? What do you see every day in the mirror? I'm very curious about that. Like, why? Why do you respond in such a manner that you are kissing up to this guy who don't care anything about you? Because he doesn't. It's a sad thing. But I just said, if we are separate, honestly, I think we're going to benefit out of it. They're not. And they're not going to believe it because they're going to say, how are they surviving? How are they able to do that?
Dr. Diamond, our steps are ordered. I believe this is the divine intervention that we need. We were segregated in the South. We had to unite to figure out how to move forward. So now if we have someone leading us, now you're going to let us have time to organize and have someone. Remember Nat Turner?
Okay. Yes.
And it was funny because he used to preach, but there was an underlining dialogue. There was a code. And they're like, And that's just something that they don't know. And if it happened, as you know, history repeats itself. It's just the players are different. That's
right.
Yeah. So maybe this is what we need so that we can come together with one voice. Kendrick Lamar did it on the Super Bowl, right? Red, white, and blue. Yes.
Yeah, Kendrick definitely did
a backlash of that, but there was something there. I saw it. That we can come unite, and I think you just put the nail in the coffin right now, because now we can organize due to a common enemy. So let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Now that we're still waiting on our guests, we can, continue to talk about this topic. But I also think we can shift into what is human trafficking. So when we have an opportunity to ask her as well, Miss Thorne, when she gets on with us, human trafficking, if no one knows about it, the thing is, it is a mindset of, or another form of slavery, but in a sexual way, where it is a cunning behavior. It's subtle. It can simply be this person. They target people who are vulnerable, and I remember reading a statistic, and this was a few years ago when I had this same conversation with a pastor who also works with human trafficking survivors. She talked about how 99% is Black men are the ones that are human trafficking our kids. And they are. They target them by just simply buying them a pair of sneakers and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to take care of you. I know you're poor. You don't have anything. And that is their way of getting to them. And when they do that, they use that to bring them into the trafficking world. And that's how they get it started, and the girls are young. They start them out young, and don't think they don't get the boys too. They get them too, but they probably do it in a different way when they get the young men. And it could be simply as sneakers as well, because they don't have it. They could look at their feet and say, look at their feet. I got this person. I'm going to target this person. These vans and stuff that are driving around, you don't know these vans are starting to look very different. It's not like where you can see through the windows anymore. You can't see in those windows. That's a possibility. That's a human trafficking van. Some of them are white, some of them are Black. And when they throw them in there, they can't get back out. And this is something that shared with us about that.
Yeah. Hey, just really quickly along those same lines, I just looked it up and I was going to bring some of these statistics up, and some of them are dated because of COVID and everything like that. But in 2022, there were 1,912 people referred to the U.S. attorneys for human trafficking offenses, and that was a 26% increase from 2012. And the National Human Trafficking Hotline identified 100,891 cases of human trafficking involving approximately 197 victims since its inception and everything. So like I said, in that sense, that was around 2022. So we're now talking 2025. So we know those statistics have gone up and all along those lines. As a matter of fact, I'm even seeing some statistics from 2024 as well. So it definitely is not something that should be ignored, because it is a major problem. And like you said, a lot of our kids are very much into social media and they're into things like that and all along those lines. And I can tell you that is even a man who was in his 60s, early 60s and everything along those lines, that I know for a fact that, but still in that single space and all along those lines, that there are still a number of folks that even to this day try to catfish me and all along those lines. So catfishing is a way that they can also target human traffickers as well, because they would definitely get that going as well. Because even as I'm looking at the ones from last year, which was 2024, they said around the globe an estimated 27 million people are exploited for labor, services, and commercial sex. So we do know that they are targeting people, and a lot of times it is done through catfishing and all along that kind of line. So definitely be cautious with the things that you are putting out there and the things that you are doing.
And I'm gonna put it out there with what we watch. Have you heard of the show Beauty in Black? Have you watched it? I watched it as a research project. And basically what happened is it was a family that had money, and the brothers together, they had a business, but the one did not know that underlining they had a strip club and they were trafficking women and men. So what happened is they had a judge involved. I guess that's how they got their referrals. I'm gonna use that word. So then they had someone who was vulnerable. They would pay their debt. But then after the debt was paid, they would get released, but then they had to work for the strip club and do other things. So that's something that if kids see that in the norms, is glorified. They think that's what life's about, but technically it's trafficking. If I'm basically clearing your debt. Now you owe me with interest and whatever the arrangement would be. But this is something that I saw, and because I'm a survivor, I listened to that and saw it, and I was like, wow. But it looks like, and then the one girl was on and she got her body done. So that's another thing, shaming. People need to be happy with the bodies that they were given. exercise, because there was a girl in there who had to go to the hospital, but just not to go down too far into it, but look into that, because our children are watching that. It's syndicated. So if they're seeing something and no one's talking to them about what the material is, then you're thinking that that's normal. So thank you, Dr. Diamond, for mentioning that, because at times, if you have young parents, they're not raising the children. And if folks have to work, then who is watching these children, what they're seeing? And again, my niece is 10, and I listen. And I love how her mother parents her. She looks into her messages. And there was one text that she got about mean faces. And the girl was her age group. Oh, my sister, I don't like her, and et cetera, et cetera. She said, what do I do with that? I said, well, you need to talk to her.
Yeah.
Because someone is not monitoring the text messages. So then could be anger. That's one emotion. Then what if someone is catfishing and sends something and it's not filtered?
Mm-hmm.
So, we really have to pay attention, and sometimes we don't. So then this is the end result of someone who may develop a low self-esteem, and now someone is giving them attention that they're not getting at home. And then it goes from there. And the grooming starts in all different types of ways. But this show, as well as other ones, another one is Jenny in Georgia. So these are shows that are showing about self-harm. And I just, on Netflix.
Yeah.
So we really need to pay attention. I
Yeah,
don't want to go into that fully, but this is where it starts, is paying attention to your children. I don't care, I will get on your nerves. Knock, knock, open my door. Because at times, there are children together with the same sex, and they're exploring, and no one knows. Because again, okay, you have your girlfriend. Oh, hey, but what if they're lovers? And I've heard that on my couch at work in the past. So it's just a lot of topics. We can go on and on and on. But really, it's being well informed with your children, knowing what they're doing, checking their phone. Like you said, Mark, you got catfish, and how did that come through? I'm curious about that.
Like I said, they would send a note, and sometimes it would be a note like, wanting to be rescued and having some sort of problem going on along those lines. So they would sit there and be like, if you can help me with this debt or that debt, and all along those lines. So like I said, I'm one of those people who will call the bluff. So I even called one time, and the person who was supposed to be a woman sure sounded like a Nigerian man to me and everything like that. So like, you don't even sound like what you are presenting yourself as.
Wow.
So there's they can send fake pictures, they can send things like that, fake profiles, and a lot of other things that are very much fake that are out there. So that's just something you got to watch out and everything. But you brought up something, which is the whole notion of caring for what our kids are doing. I don't have any kids of my own, but I do have two nephews. They'll be 16 and 17 next year. Well, actually this year in the month of August and everything. And I know that my brother tries to keep an eye on what they're doing, but they're into phones and into the video games and stuff like that. But do y'all remember the phrase, it was very popular back in the 90s and the 2000s, of the latchkey kids, which was people that would basically be left at home alone, and you never knew really what they were doing. It was a term that was definitely used a lot in our urban areas like Chicago and New York and places like that.
I was latchkey, and I'm gonna be honest. My mom died at a younger age. My aunt was young, so she worked. My grandfather was on the second floor. So what happened is, I went to Catholic school, but I lived on the avenue. So what happens is, when you come home in your uniform, she thinks she's all that. No, I had an education somewhere else, but the other things that I had to see. And from there, you're very impressionable. You want friends, and sometimes the friends, they're not your people. And at that time, they have older brothers and things. And then, not to change gears, my niece happened to run away at one point. And what bothered me, there was a person when my father went to the house, and the guy was asking. I said, well, why isn't the mother asking? So that still jars in my head. And I've never really had a time to really explore that, but I'm heightened. So that means that if you're visiting, why would a male be speaking for the person of the house? And I'm not saying that was something negative, but those are the things that you need to listen to. If your child is going to anyone's house, you need to know who lives there. What is the makeup? Because when you go there, of course, when you were children back in the day, I think we used to go to a hotel because we couldn't go to folks' house. Now things are different. It's a different time. But we need to be more invested. And it's just not a free night out. Because that's where I think then, I want to go out, I want a babysitter. You need to know what the household is made of. And at a different time, we'll discuss that. But we really need to be nosy. It's being informed and caring. Or why are you in my business? Your business, you don't have no business. Until you're 18, you have no business. If I pay for a phone, I can do whatever I want. I can audit it at any time. I can go in your room and look through your things. And that's something that I did and I had stopped. And I think that if we can get back to the old ways, we can protect our children. Because right now, they're exposed to electronics. Their fingers can type in and see anything that's unfiltered. And they can see things, you know?
Yeah.
So, I'm going to leave that for another show because we have a lot of material. We can get parenting. These can go anywhere. But we're talking about human trafficking.
Right.
And if Mark got catfish and he actually did some research, he vetted it and asked. And then from there, it can go any type of way. At times, people want you to do accounts for money. There's a lot of fraud. But when it comes to impressionable minds, we have to be caring to understand is you never know what these kids are going to do because mentally, they're not where we were. They're exposed to a lot more. For them to say that they're fluid and they think we were born male and female. So that tells you what these children are exposed to. I like girls. I like boys. How would you know that? You are just trying to finish school and learn how to take care of yourself and provide your basic activities of daily living to live. So, we have a lot of work to do. And this platform is to inform folks, to bring them back to the basis of how we got to where we are and why we are in the fields that we are in, because we do care.
Yeah, but not only that, Toya, but just think about it. Let's be honest. We probably all, when we were kids, did that fake runaway. You're going to run away and you might run down to the corner store if you were in a urban environment, or in my case, I think one time either me or my brother were going to run away and we had a long road, like a long path from the road that led to the house. And I don't even think we got up to the top of the hill because we weren't really trying to run away and everything like that. But a lot of times there was that notion of you're going to run away, and now people are running away, and sometimes they're running away into what they think are real relationships, and they might be running into a trafficking environment because they might be running into the hands of the enemy and all along those lines, because there's a lot of people that are tempting folks, including tempting young people to come into their neighborhoods or all along those lines, and they might even be masquerading. I mean, who among us have not heard the stories, and we hear it oftentimes on the news, of the person that is masquerading to be in the same age range as the person that they are trying to tempt, and all along those lines. And I know that there are legitimate May December relationships out there, and if it's legitimate, that's fine and dandy, but there can also be a trap as well and everything. Shucks, I got a coach over here at the UNC that's dating a 20-something-year-old, and but he was also the coach of y'all's folks up there in the Northeast, because he was the New England Patriots coach and everything like that. But I sometimes wonder, what is that relationship really like, and how much control is it? But then I read somewhere where they were feeling that she's actually controlling him in terms of the relationship, because I think that she's requested that any emails go through her and everything like that. So there's some control tactics that are happening as well.
You know what was coming to mind too with human trafficking? You have people that use trauma bonding with a person as well to manipulate. So what do? If they're a person that came from an abusive household, so let's just use that as one of the foundations. And then they run into a young girl and she too knows what you're talking about. All right. A good example of that was R. Kelly. He did those same things. He did trauma bonding. And he would talk about his sexual abuse, and then he'll meet a young girl. One of them, all of them were pretty much young, because that was his focus. But he used trauma bonding to manipulate. Once he was able to manipulate them, we're talking about a major vulnerability there. When you are traumatized, you are broken all over the place. You don't know which way is up. You don't know who you are. So at that point, a perpetrator can get in. And that's what R. Kelly did. He wasn't the most educated person. Let's be frank here, okay? This man did not pick up a book like we did. He did not finish his education as we did. But he knew how to manipulate, because the mind is younger. When you're 14, 15, 16 years old and you're a grown-up, yes, you can manipulate that person. And it is not an excuse to use your trauma to inflict trauma on another person. It is unacceptable. It is nothing that he could have gotten out of. There are times that I go back because for my doctorate degree, my degree is in studies in advanced human behavior. So, that means I focus on your behavior and why you do it. So I have gone back to that same interview he had with Gail. And Gail asked him the question of, you have people believing this behavior. And he said, well, they're lying on me. She said, how is that possible when it's more than one person and they don't know each other? See, he didn't have an answer. That's why he flew off the handle, because he couldn't believe, one, he was being outed, because he really was. And it wasn't that she was blatantly outing him. It was how she was asking him the question. And once she asked that question, he blacked out. But to fast forward, the young ladies, let's look at the Lifetime series that they had on him. That documentary, it wasn't about burying him. It was about the fact, like you said, educating and exposing the music business. Because now you have to focus on who is our person that they're on right now is Diddy. Because he too did the same thing, but he did it in a way of, okay, you want to break into the music business. This is what you have to do for me, A, B, and C. So did R. Kelly. Again, but R. Kelly used trauma. Diddy use violence. His was violence. So if he can scare you, then your next thing is going to be, what form of protection can I do for myself? That would be, I have to give in to what he wants. And that's what a lot of them did. And it's unfortunate, but that is another way of human trafficking. These people had, well, at least R. Kelly, he had these young women living in his home and didn't let them go home or communicate with their families. And that was his way of manipulating them and getting them into his home and into his circle. I mean, to me, he's a pathetic human being who took advantage of young girls. It started with, of course, we all know it started with Aaliyah when he married her, and then it progressed into other ways. He figured out different ways to manipulate the system, and he did it. What's your thoughts on that?
I'm going to just say, because I'm a survivor, and, this is basically what it is, because I lost my mother at a young age, and what happens is back then it was a statutory rape. But just think about it. If someone who has trauma is 5 years, they'll say by law you can date. And I have counseled sex offenders. And that was something, one guy said to me, that was my sister's friend. And basically she was blackmailing me. That's the only reason why she exposed our relationship, because I'm 6 years older. So I'm talking, I said, well, now mentally, why would you want to be with someone that young? But It was where it opened my eyes. And then earlier, I couldn't disclose things. But I feel that when you have someone that can identify, but that is a game, it's a manipulation fact. And then if there's someone in those communities where it's a norm, it's a social norm. And basically now it's being exposed. So now what I'm thinking is we need to train and educate young kids. And that's what the Butterfly Room is going to talk about. Taking the information and breaking it down to adolescents, because we're mentoring. They need to be presented with situations so that their mind, if you have been through something, and in Mark, I had ran away when my mother died. I was 7 years old. I was walking from 2 towns away, and I got into a car with 2 white strangers. And I always look at my life, why they didn't take me. They said, well, where you live? I took them to the address. They dropped me back off in 1984. So that means in 1984, if this white couple did not return to me, because it was a white town, Metuchen, New Jersey, I would not be here. Right. So now I think back, and as I write my memoir of how my life would have been different. So I feel now and I accept that my steps are ordered. I have seen and heard a lot in my life. And I just knew I was going to New Brunswick where my grandmother lived. And I walked out the house. And they said, what's wrong with her? But I knew how to get there. I've always paid attention to geographics and things like that. But I just thank God that things could have been different. So now you put anyone that has a trauma that happens in their life and they're put into situations and they're very impressionable. So now these are the folks that need the therapy. But in our culture, they think you're crazy. But working in the mental health field for 26 years, I've seen it and I've healed myself and forgave myself. Because when you have so many traumas in your life, you think that you're not a good person. But I'm still standing here at the brink of 50 soon to know that we are vessels or folks who care, who can fix and minister to our folks and others. But at times, we're distracted by what's in the world. And we need platforms like this so that we can move forward and protect those. Not the stories that we're seeing that's glorifying this lifestyle, but how do we protect our people? And so to ensure that they don't go through this. And thank you, Dr. Diamond, for bringing up, because it's one through violence, one through trauma. And I think that R. Kelly is sick. He needed treatment. But at that time, when someone has gone through that abuse, it's either you become an abuser or a victim.
But he's not the only one. He's not the only one. Let's be very real and everything. There are a lot of people, and I admired the show that it was when it was on, and was definitely a fan. But in hindsight, a lot of people are learning about some of the things that were done exploitatively, in the sense of what even Bill Cosby did, and all along those lines. And definitely that is something that we have to address, because there is definitely very much of a casting couch. And we do know that even in the colleges, because I live not that far from North Carolina Central University. Actually, I work near North Carolina Central University, live near Duke University, and there's a lot of kids, and they're kids of all types, both white, black, purple, and everything else, that are getting caught up in the culture and all along those lines. And there are date drugs, and there's things along those lines. As a matter of fact, there was a Duke student that actually got outed because they were, and it was a white student and everything. They got outed because they were found that they were involved in the pornography industry. They were a major pornography star, and this was like maybe about, I want to say close to 10 years ago or something along those lines. But you can look her up. But she was a Duke student, and then it was found out that one of her fellow students outed her, because they had been watching those things, and they saw that she was in there, and they basically outed her that she didn't manage, I think, to get her degree. And I think she even stayed for a minute in the adult film career and everything. But now I think she might even be doing some mainstream films, and might even be in the speaking world as well. But I do remember hearing that story where she was a Duke student, literally making porn movies and all in that space. And if it hadn't been for a fellow student outing her, she probably still would be doing that. And we know people that were doing involvement in the strip clubs. There was a famous case with the Duke lacrosse students and everything, that there are, and I think that sister might have been going to the HBCU here and everything along those lines. So we got people that are trying to figure out a way to make money, and sometimes those ways to make money aren't always the best ways to make money, and all in that way. So they get caught up in the blue industry, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. You're right. Bill Cosby and the dating drug, when he went and sat on, it was a Johnny Carson's couch when he was there, and he talked about the Spanish Fly. I think what some of us as Black and brown people, the world does not look at us the same way. When a crime is committed, you're going to prison. I don't care what you say or do, because it was only designed to prosecute and penalize people. It is, when you look at the other things or other people, well, you have Epstein, you have the other guy who did the same thing as well, but they're in prison. Well, Epstein, he murdered his own self. He killed his own self, suicide, right? He died by suicide. Most of them do that anyway, because they can't live with the shame and the guilt and everything that they've done, but they did the same form of manipulation. And then when these white women got together and they did it, they believed them. I want you to really think about the balance here of how they treated those girls on the Lifetime when they did the documentary about R. Kelly. They did not want to believe them. And I hate to say this, but it is a distinct difference, especially when it comes to Black women. They never believe anything we say, because it is that stereotype that we're Jezebels. So we're loose women. And this was created in, of course, the enslavement time, that Black women were loose. No, you raped them. That's the difference.
And most of the time, they won't. If you ask them, did you take it, or did I give you permission? That question is
Right.
never answered. It's never,
Yes.
date rape does happen, and people don't
Yes.
believe it. There is date rape. As they say, if I'm married and I don't want to be intimate with you tonight, that is it. And
Yeah.
women
And
feel
no
that
is
we are
no.
not a prize. We are
Right.
not a prize. And
Right.
that's what happens. Or, you know what? Economically, he's my kid's father. He's,
Yep.
then that's when it comes. So people got to realize it's physical, emotional,
Yep.
sexual, okay?
Yes. Yes.
And economic.
Yes.
People
Yeah.
don't believe that there's different levels of abuse. And when you are a trauma survivor or have gone through anything, people look at, no. You need to really look deep down and understand and pull it from the root. And there's always something, but folks don't want to ever ask the person of color. And as you think, I remember for the surviving R. Kelly, just to kind of go back, remember the one girl, she said, I remember. Then she changed and she finally disclosed, I forget which one that was, but she was a dancer. Remember the dancer? In
Yeah.
the interview? And she said, I know she was in the back. And then I think later on, she disclosed that she was also touched.
Yes. It took her the second one for her to really say it was me too. Okay. But I think she said she didn't feel she was going to be believed. And it's true. When you think about this whole thing, now let's, because we're talking about human trafficking, if you have a set of 10 women of color that said, hey, I have been human trafficked, do you know our community will say they're liars instead of believing me? So then if I'm a liar, why would I say anything? I'm not going to be comfortable to say anything because you're saying I'm a liar. But then if we have those outside of our community make the same type of complaint and said,
they're
hey,
more
I have
concerned.
been
More concerned.
They're more concerned. They believe everything they have to say. They go out of their way and make sure that they're getting the help that they need and all that they go about getting the help. Forgetting that these same young people, they too need mental health services. They need medical services. They need all the interventions that those that are the white counterparts actually get. Those young women that went through all that trauma, I bet you none of them received the therapeutic services that they needed. Some probably have, others did not. But
or
a
the
lot
family
of them
denied it. Or
the family denied it. Yes.
Because of the stigma. And then think of I just came in my head, the LGBTQ community. They can make a woof, and what happens?
Yeah.
Then it's a hate crime. So now you have to
crime.
understand that's another layer. So most of the time, most women of color, they're trauma victims who are untreated, unheard, unconvicted. Right. Then what happens is, and I can just say, once one person, then you got to get at least 3 people who identify the same individual. Oh, it happened. But it would take years to find out, because guess what? You can be sitting right next to someone, as you said, oh, you want some sneakers, you want this, but it starts from slavery times. And that underlining hate is even for some men who are not sure about their sexuality. What do? They're forceful. They do certain things. But the whole thing here is that we really need to be honest and find someone that you can disclose, that you can talk to. I know in the Catholic Church, you can go to a priest, but for our Black and brown people, we need to be open to therapy and healing. And I think that if we start there, we would do a lot better. But there's a stigma on it. Oh, if I say something, someone's going to look at me crazy. And I just know this is hard, and I'm grateful for this, because we need to heal our Black and brown people. But it starts somewhere with reading, not just in the headlines because someone's arrested. We need to do it for a proactive versus a reactive approach. If we do it like that, so that's where the books need to come out into the schools, mentoring. I just think that when we have an opportunity and have a voice, is we need to utilize that so that we can get the change that we need. But it's hard. And now we are in a situation of the government that is a distraction that is allowing us to remain unhealed, hurting one another. As you said, Dr. Nyman earlier, as far as the gangs, that's where they go hard with the laws. because they allow us to have a gun to kill each other and everything like that. But I guess it gets too much. Then they want to step in there, and there are people who will, go and get some type of justice, and they're not the ones because they don't have a lawyer. They just have a public defender. So they're filling the jails. So that's a whole nother topic.
And Miss
But as
Toya,
far as human trafficking, we need to start with our youth to explain what that means. But you remember the books about proper touch and different things. I just remember as a kid, no sitting on anyone's lap.
right.
Then you can go into another culture. The little kids are just on men's laps. Why do you? I don't like that. Some of my multicultural friends. Why would a man want to put a kid and bunch them on their lap? That's just something that it bothers me, because really a man should not be that up and close and personal with a young girl, because then that's where the grooming starts. It's learned behavior. It's okay. And, in our case, like Uncle so-and-so, and that person, as a kid, oh, that's my uncle. You're outside and you trust this person. And there was times just working with folks in therapy where it was someone close to them that touched them, because that was the uncle. And they respected their mother or father, not knowing that person was a predator the whole time.
But that's one of the things that's one of the things that's most known out there, is that it's usually somebody that is close to you that is the one that is the perpetrator, and everything along those lines and everything in that space. You were mentioning the Catholic Church, and I did go to a Jesuit university, Marquette and everything, and I can tell you that they have a negative history as well. So just because you can go to a minister doesn't mean that the ministers don't have some issues as well, because even in the Catholic Church, there have been some incidences where there have been some predatory activity within that institution, just like there's some predatory activity.
Altar boys. It was the altar boys.
Yeah, altar boys within the Baptist Church, and a number of other things as well. And I remember that definitely you got to learn the whole notion of touch and everything. I remember my mother actually got in trouble for giving when they were young, and they're probably now in their late 40s, early 50s. But when my cousins were young, she gave them the book Our Body, Ourselves, and my uncle was not that thrilled about it. But you have to have an understanding of what your body is even at a young age. So I actually thought it was a noble thing, her giving them that book, so they understood the changes that they were about to go through as women and all along those lines. But my uncle, who was a little bit of he's passed now, but he was a little bit on the conservative side, he was feeling that was a little bit too forward. But I think she was just trying to educate, and I think education is very important, and that we need to educate both about touch, because a lot of people don't understand about the dichotomy of touch. And I know that there are people that are even in the spectrum, and I know that can be a whole other topic and everything, that don't understand the concept of distance and boundaries and things along those lines. So we gotta be able to teach people about boundaries and even the understanding of boundaries. I mean, that can even be a conversation within human trafficking, because there are some young men and young women that probably let themselves get put in compromising situations because they don't understand the situations that they are getting into in the first place, and all along those lines. So we've got to do some serious education as well.
And I just had one note that's popped up. Remember, did anyone watch the Aaron Hernandez story? I did. Now, did you see the one part? It was his birthday, and the uncle was in the room, and the brother knocked on the door. That was disturbing to me. Did you see that scene?
Yeah.
And then I Googled to try to figure it out. And then the father was weird. He's like, don't do that. That's gay. So I think he was conflicted. And I just remember that one scene because he was a minor, small child. And I remember it was his birthday. And the brother was like, oh, I was just giving your brother his birthday present. Why did the door need to be closed? So I thought that was a little nugget for us to wake up. Because the way it was presented, remember that part? And I didn't, it didn't make sense. Why are you in the room? And he was sitting on the bed, and the uncle came out, and the brother was like, yeah, that shouldn't happen. But by you putting that on TV, is making it seem like it's normal. No adult should be in their bedroom with any child with the door closed like that. I don't know. Am I just too hypersensitive? But that really made me feel a certain type of way, especially now because of what they were saying, that he was living a life where he was dating the quarterback for his football team. And that's something as far as his demise. But, that's his truth. That's his story. But I just use that because if a person is very impressionable and doesn't understand that, a child would think that's a normal thing. So it's these movies, they're on too early. He was a famous athlete. However, he's no longer with us. But I just think about, you never know what someone is going on in the inside, and never judge anyone. But I think that we are quick to attack, but we really should be worrying about our own selves. As they say, we live in a glass house. But I just know as I grow older and you're trying to figure out what our purpose is. And as you know, on the couch, we talk about everything. And we're hoping that, as they say, if folks can agree, we're all in agreement, and understand that everyone's story needs to be heard. Everyone is individualized. And we need to start there and not judge.
Right, and not judge. Exactly. Our guest, she should be arriving shortly, because she is on Central Time, which is the Texas time, so their time is different from ours. But we can still go on and what we're talking about until she clicks in. I think this conversation is very good, and it gets us prepped up for her conversation with human trafficking. As you stated earlier, these little behaviors is something that it does need to be watched. No one should ever be, or a child should ever be, in a closed room with any adult. That room should be open, just in case. You may or may not have bad intentions, and it doesn't mean everybody is going to do that, but you still have to be careful, especially little girls. Little girls is who we have to be careful with, because they're little girls and they don't know. And like you said, it could be this person that you're around and you know them, but that's who the victims, the perpetrators are the people because they can actually convince you to do something that you're not supposed to be doing. And it's unfortunate, because the damage you do to that person lasts a lifetime. And these are the things that I have to do as this therapist that are helping my individuals, to let them know that you can keep living. And what you did, you didn't cause this at all. It's someone that's inflicting the pain on you, so it's so hard, because you have to come back from that trauma. That's an everyday trauma. That's a lived trauma. This is a trauma that is hard to get away from. But what you can do when you go through trauma like this, you have to understand, one, it doesn't belong to you, that person was sick. The unfortunate thing is you became that person's victim. And once you become the victim, you're trying to think to yourself, how did this happen to me? But when you're young and you're impressionable, you can't think the same way someone else is thinking. You can't say, oh, well, I put myself in this position. No, even adult women, we're not putting ourselves in positions of harm. Okay. Even, I don't know if you remember this far back, how some people will say, some women, when they dress provocatively, that, they're causing their own attacks. You can't say that to people, but that is the stuff that has been said to women when they go to court. Like, what did you have on? What does that have to do with the sick mind of a person? This is what they chose to do. They're sick. They're mental. It's nothing I can do about their mental state. But yet I have to tell you what I had on. And then now I am now the person that's looked no longer to be the victim. I'm the person who's caused my victimization. That's not fair. And then that person has to live with that. So it's just so much going on here. So the damage starts so young. And then it's, how do you get out of this? And this is something that, of course, we could talk to our guest about too. Like, how did you move from going through what you were going through, the manipulation, to now living it, and then coming out on the other end of it? And like you, she's very spiritual. Okay. And I know that that's how she got out of it, that her spirituality is what helped her. And
I know that when I saw the topic, April, and we've even had very candid conversations, and we were able early this month to minister in the workshop we did, was all things woman. And that was just the beginning of this, the healing. And it helped me put everything in a perspective. And sometimes you can't share. But I know that by having enough strength, that's what God did. Because you guys say, John 3:16, God so who loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. So at times, so you have to think about it. The Bible stories technically are what we go through right now. It's just different players. It's a book, it's a history book. And sometimes we don't look at that. The women with the issue of blood, there is so much that we can go in. That's for another topic. But you have to have people know that it is okay to not be okay.
Yeah,
And know
it
that
is. Yeah,
your abuser may be someone that you love, but you have to really know what their history is. Because
yeah.
at any time, you can be on an up and up, and then you can digress. As we talk about triggers, there are a lot of triggers. But I just have to know that, stay steadfast and move forward and not let them change. And that's how we know there's
Mhm.
another force out there. So that means we are getting great to that. When you are close to where you are supposed to birth, that's when it's going to come. And I know that if you think about when Jesus died, he said, forgive them because they know not what he does. He says, why, Father, do you forsake me? He made the choice
Mhm.
to do that. And now
Yeah.
at the end, what was it? So think we're out here in this world, we have these airways, but we are giving positivity, healing, growth. And I
Mhm.
just, God does not make mistakes. You know how we met. And as we
Mhm.
go on, we bounce off of each other. And just know that
Yeah.
I'm not going to go back to where I came. I came from nothing. And we are here for a reason. And we're going to continue to be blessed. And if you're not in it, hey, but I know if God is
Yeah.
not in it, I don't want it. Mantras,
Yeah.
a weekly mantra, because we need a tune up, because we're out here in this world. As you know, no one's perfect. You have people with the cloth. And I know that with the TD Jakes was out there in the story for Diddy, Eddie Long down in Atlanta,
Mhm.
all this. But at the time, people were getting what they were getting. And then when they didn't get what they didn't get, then that's when they talked. So that's
Yeah.
trafficking. There is some type of relationship here. It doesn't matter. Anytime there's a financial transaction taking place, that's unlawful. You're
Yeah.
married, but sometimes people are married, people are sold. Remember the betrothal, you had your dowry, you're betrothed to someone, and that's how it was back
Mhm.
then. But it
Mhm.
started then, it just evolved. The first, I guess, as a kid was The Color Purple. Remember Sealy, Mister? And that
Mhm.
was a book. It was a
Uh-huh.
movie. Now we
It's a
have the
movie.
musical. Think about it.
Yeah.
She was sold. Her father sold her, but he impregnated children. That is the story of the
Yeah.
Black woman. So you think
Yeah.
about it. And some people say, well, they'll accept, we're Black. That's what it's supposed to be. Oh, what they say, you ain't no good. All you good for laying on your back. You
Mhm.
understand? So that is
Mhm.
a culture, that is a root that needs to be ripped up. But at
Yeah.
times when you have a person who has been through stuff and they have a low self-esteem, they don't think they're good. But you are somebody. We were
You are.
created for a purpose. And sometimes we don't know what it is. But through life, we go through channels. And I just know that when we're on the right track, that's when people will come for you. So understand, when they say the survival of the fittest, it's because you're going to be
Mhm.
tested. And we are meant for
Mhm.
something great. I don't care what color we are, creed, denomination, religious affiliation. But we here on the couch, don't talk about what you don't want to talk about. I see today we don't have any comments. Do we have any comments out here today?
No, not today.
But
But
we will
don't
get our
worry, they
playback.
always go back. Yeah, we always have people that go back and they follow us and they talk to us and stuff. So, well, they see what we talk about. So, the thing is today, it is a heavy topic today, and we don't know all that people, what would they take from this? Now, I want to go back a little bit
Yes.
about trafficking, right? So,
Hmm.
I would love to hear your perspective on this, Mark, as well, with the first form of human trafficking. And Mark, you're a historian, so you know where I'm going with this first level of trafficking is the human trafficking of Africans.
Mm-hmm.
They were trafficked over
Hmm.
here to the United States to have they worked freely for this government. That same place that
Hmm.
we're living in, we were raised in, and we lived in our whole lives. This is where it all started. So, this human trafficking has gone from generation to generation. And you have to think about how we move through the United States. I want you to think about very keenly what I'm saying to you about human trafficking and how that impacted us right now as the grown adults that we are. What would you say about that?
Well, you just brought up something that very much at the same field and along those same kind of lines, which is this whole notion of us being a commodity, which is what we were
Yes.
considered back then,
Yes.
and all along those lines. And that's even kind of coming back to this notion of when women are seen as provocative figures and all along those lines, and they're actually almost trying to be retried when they have been trafficked and have been abused and all along those lines. That's no different than what was going on in the slavery days, when we know that women as well as men were set up there and put up there as a specimen to be sold almost like cattle and all along those lines. So it's just that kind of mindset that even plays into our whole judicial system as well. So there's a lot of times, and I heard y'all talking earlier, this notion that you're going to try to put people on trial and say that they enticed the person to do the activity and all on those lines. So that's a mentality that's been out there for a while. And that's even kind of what they did with the whole notion of human trafficking. And there's no doubt that slavery, whether you came through the ports of South Carolina or the ports of Florida and everything else, we were definitely being auctioned and treated as a commodity, a product, not as a human and everything. And later we became 3/5 of a man. And even then we weren't considered fully known as the full amount of humanity, even though we know for a fact that a lot of the inventions and the things that are made this society great and made this world great came from the minds of African Americans and the minds of people that would be considered part of the diaspora.
Exactly.
Yes.
We brought over so much. So when they trafficked us, they forgot that they trafficked human beings. What they thought they were trafficking over was cattle. These are our lineage, or the people before us. Of course, they thought they build everything, mathematics and cleaning. I was watching something on Facebook, and again, like you, Mark, I'm a historian person. I love history and I love ours. And what I do with colonial history and the Viking history is I look at and balance out our knowledge and what we have done. So they were talking about the Moors. The Moors were extreme. They were conquerors, okay? And it's the way they did it. They didn't kill people to get what they wanted. They just went to the land and they blend in with the people that was there. And what they did was, and how they ruled and it was more of educating. They educated the Europeans just on the basics of taking care of personal hygiene. Now, when you look at the Europeans, they ate sugar, and sugar meant that you were royal and you were rich, but yet their teeth were rotting out. They didn't even take a bath. Only time they took a bath is when they married someone. Okay. Women felt that keeping their private area smelling means it meant something of royalty, which I think is a weird way to view yourself. But the Moors taught them how to do these things. They also taught them education. So thinking and knowledgeable and trying to do things that was logical and rational things of how they did things. Aristotle and I can't even think of the other.
Socrates.
Yes, Socrates. They learned from the Moors. That's who they got their education from. So I don't know how we went from these knowledgeable people to cattle from the Europeans, these very Europeans that came here also as they came over on their own, but they came over here. You are not the original native people that lived here at all. But that's my take on that part of the human trafficking part when we look at history.
Yeah, but not only that, let's look at, and I know I've gotten this conversation with your husband as well, but Jesus Christ himself, they try to paint him as like this white figure and everything, but we know that he definitely had figures that would make him like more of a person of color and all along those lines, but they don't even acknowledge that part of it, because you go to many of our churches, they oftentimes have painted as like this blue-eyed, blonde hair individual, even though last time I checked, hair of wool and feet of bronze doesn't sound like a figure. It would be like that Michelangelo, or even that image that came out of Charlton Heston and others, in that way that they were presented.
Yes, and this is what they present. But if we are logically thinking, as we all should, and I know a lot of people don't like to go back in the day and talk about what happened in slavery or the period of the dynasties, but you need to go back somewhere to understand where you're going forward too. So yes, they talk about Jesus being white, but yet the Bible describes him very well on what he looks like. So how do you confuse that? I don't know, but we're talking about a place where everything is below the equator, and therefore every continent that's below the equator, you're going to have sun. And the sun is not going to make you lighter. The sun is actually going to make you darker because the sun is constantly beaming all day long. So if the sun is beaming all day long, how can you look white? That's impossible. But they wanted to portray Jesus as a white person. And for me, I never believed that from day one. I just didn't. And as a child, I knew that wasn't right. I said, that just don't sound right to me at all. Because in Revelations, if he's described as this bronze person, how do you go from that to not being bronze anymore? Like, how does that happen? But again, from my understanding, they are looking at someone who, well, they created. Again, this is Michelangelo, like Mark was saying. Michelangelo, excuse me 1 second. I'm just looking at this thing. So Toya, just resume. I'm gonna go out just for a second.
Okay, no problem. So basically, yeah, we're depicted as, we put in a likeness to each other. But you have to think, wool's hair. I know that there is a mixture in my heritage because both of my parents are brown skin and I came out light skin. But that's basically how beautiful we are. When you have melanin, we're able to retain the sun. We're able to glisten. And as we know that, we have to continue to look and have common sense in what the word is. But we know what we know. But when we meet our creator, we will really know who he is. So there's so many things that we have to look at. We are a beautiful people. We are here. And we really shouldn't even be thinking about what someone looks as our neighbor. All I know is that if we were slit our wrists, we will both have the same blood that runs through our veins. We were made by an entity that created us. And as individuals, we continue to procreate to populate the earth. And that's really what it is. But at times, we are distracted with what we are fed. And we just had to continue to have common sense. And as you just look at our neighbors, left and right, as we walk through the world and know who we are. So thank you, Dr. Diamond, for, hitting on that piece. Hey, Mark, I just had to go for a restroom break.
No, and I'm actually at an event over here at the Haiti. And by the way, it's an event that you women should be at, but y'all are in the wrong state and everything. But it's the 8th annual Women at Work. So it's a Women History Month celebration because, this is an African-American building in an African-American cultural arts
center. You have to share, Mark, when there's some things, man.
Performing and everything like that. So we've got a poet who'll be performing. Mama Ruby will be doing some work as well. And she is a drummer and a performer as well. And then we've also got a dancing group as well as several others that'll be performing, including Kimberly McCrae, who's a longtime friend that's a spoken word artist, and the United Strings of Color, which is a African-American kind of classical music group. As a matter of fact, they call themselves addressing racial disparity in classical music through education and community engagement and everything. So that's what we've got going on over here. And that's at 2:00. So they'll be starting in about another, what's that?
Well, Mark, you need to share your information, please, so that me and Dr. Diamond can come down. We love culture. That's something that sounds very good. So you do this annually?
We'll definitely do that. Y'all can make a road trip, and it's also sometimes online. So if you go to hayti.org, I think it might actually be airing.
Can you post that across the bottom of the screen?
Folks, my coworkers, and see if we're airing this particular program live. But I know oftentimes we do air stuff live, as a matter of fact. I think I'm gonna check right now. So hold on 1 second.
Yeah, and then you can put it across the screen because now we have a producer who can give us all the snaps.
Yeah, yes. And Miss Thorne will be on. Yes, Miss Thorne should be on in about 1 to 2 minutes. Okay. She just
Okay.
texted me to let me know. That's why I got off for a second. Excuse me of our followers. I just got off for 1 second just to solidify our guest today. Of course, her time frame is different than ours. So being in Texas, their time is behind us. And, you know, sometimes when your time is different, you're not thinking about, oh, yeah, this is the time I need to log on, which is their time. So no problem at all. I told her, you know, when you're settled, you know, we're here waiting on you coming on. So she should be on shortly. And what I have to say again about Angela, when I met her, she has such a positive attitude, and you would never know that she went through something in her lifetime. And again, she is so you could tell she's a giving person, you know. And hearing her story, you're going to say, well, dang, you know, how did she get to that place where she was human trafficked? And again, she's going to tell you how. And also, you know, again, we'll talk about different tools on how she healed, and then what we can do to heal our communities, because our community is also, you know, again, paralyzed with this, you know. And it's not just the African American community, but also the white community as well, because she is a Caucasian woman. And but she's going to tell you again how she got caught up. And it's, you know, just hearing bits of her story, but understanding how she is now an unbroken person, and that she's a survivor, and then having the ability to survive and then tell your story. Like, that is a huge thing when you're able to come back from such a trauma as that, and then come from that trauma and then talk about it afterwards. So just even understanding, how did she get to this place where she's able to, again, work through this trauma and then help other people who's probably going through the trauma? How does she avoid, and this is what I'm going to be asking her, how does she avoid the triggers? Because she can be triggered by somebody else's story. Like, how does she get to that place where she is not traumatized by their story? So we're going to have
it's a daily work.
It is a daily work. And it's
a daily work.
Yep, just talking about her right now. She just popped on now. So we're going to have the opportunity to speak with her. And again, I met her down in Texas, where, again, we were on the same program, and it was about domestic violence. And it was an extraordinary program. And I thought her story, or what she did talk about being on the panel, was extraordinary. And I wanted to explore who she is even more. Then Angela had the chance to ask me, you know, can you be on my show? I said, yeah, sure, I'll be on your show. But the funny thing is, when we were sitting there, we were talking about what we were doing that day, I listened to her and I said, oh, I need her to be on the podcast because she has an awesome story to tell. So without further ado, we are going to bring on Angela Thorne. She has written a book about Unbroken, a survivor's story. So we are going to welcome her onto the couch. Good morning. Good morning, Angela Thorne. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We are so excited about seeing you, talking to you. Welcome to the couch. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So we have Miss Toya here, and we have Mark also. He'll be going in and out because he's kind of multitasking, you know, how we all are. We all are for our community, you know, and I know, Angela, you are engulfed into your community. So we understand that here on the couch. So what I would like for you to do is begin to just give us a background of who you are, and then we'll just gradually ask you questions of how and where you went from being in human trafficking to getting out of it, and how you became this survivor. So let's start with your background. Talk to us.
Sure. Thank you so much again. And I apologize for my tardiness. I'm glad it all worked out though. So who I am, I was born and raised in Lubbock, Texas, to a loving mother and father. My dad has been serving on the Lubbock Police Department for 40 plus years. He is very active in the police department still as a detective. He's retired 5 years ago, then he went back to it. And then my mom is a medical professional. She's been serving in that space since I was pretty young. She retired in 2021. So I am the youngest of 4 kids. We're all 2 years apart. So there's that sibling dynamic that I have going on. But overall, I was born into a pretty tight-knit family. We're half Italian and half German, dated all the way back to Vikings. So we're crazy. We're wild. We're outspoken. But most of all, we're tight-knit and we love each other very dearly. Just to kind of paint that picture. Unfortunately, around the age of 8 and 9 years old, my parents' marriage got real rocky. And by the time I was 10 years old, they decided to divorce. And then we became a split family and a broken home. And we had to make the choice. Do we go with dad? Do we stay with mom? You know, those decisions that no child should ever have to face. And it created, it started creating a fractured foundation for me. And I started having a really skewed view of love and connection and how to seek out what healthy connection looks like. And I didn't really have that modeled for me either in their dynamic. They tried the best, but you know, their generations were very abusive and toxic, and they tried their best to break off those generational traumas, but it did carry into our world as well, and to some degree. So we didn't, all that to say, once they divorced, my older siblings were left, they were parentified and kind of left to take care of me. And primarily my oldest sibling, who is my brother, he's 6 years older than me. And at this point, he was, when they first divorced, he was a sophomore, but by the time I was about 12, he was a senior in high school. And we grew up in a college town, and what was really popular and still is, I hear, is house parties and like fraternity parties, sorority parties, that kind of scene. And I was thrown into that scene by default because they would be babysitting me, but they didn't want to miss out on their fun. So they would just drag me along to these parties. And then I was just exposed to this space that I did not belong in. I didn't have the mind to process this scene. And I quickly became an alcoholic because that was so prevalent in that space. So I started drinking a lot. And that led to being vulnerable to predators. And I was sought out pretty early on when I was around 12 years old and exploited for the first time. That over amount of time of grooming, he groomed me to become a recruiter. So I was inviting other 12, 13, 14-year-olds into their home to do various things, but primarily to get things on video and on footage. And then later found out they were taking that footage and selling it, which became, you know, a commercial trade, which we know now that is a crime of child sex trafficking. So that's when I first became a victim of that space, but not knowing. I didn't know I was a victim of anything. When you're groomed in that way, they start creating this separation of you and family and you and parents, and they're the safe person and your family is not. And so they start playing mind games and brainwashing me into seeing them as my enemy and them as my safe person. And so with that said, I began to live this double life. I did what I needed to do to survive in my family dynamic. I put on the face I needed to put on there. I functioned as a cheerleader. I was a competitive cheerleader dancer. I volunteered in my church. I sang on the choir. I was very active in my school, in the popular crowd, you name it. I functioned to the point where my family just deemed me as a teen. She's just acting like this because she's a teenager. she has the hormones, whatever, all the red flags I was displaying were chalked up as just my age, just it's that season of life for her. In reality, I was pretty much a poster child for somebody who was getting sexually abused, and it was just not seen as such. There's a lot of reasons why, primarily because the education just wasn't there back then. This was early 2000s, and we just didn't have the language as a society, truly. But mostly because my parents didn't know the language or the red flags, and it was just easy to go under the radar. And since I was having all of this turmoil going on inside, I was desperate to find relief and comfort, and I found that in men. I found that in drugs and alcohol and eventually porn. And also sex. So I became an addict of a lot of things, and I sought those things out to find relief and comfort with all the trauma I had going on inside of me. And once I became a drug addict, that left me even more vulnerable to being exploited by somebody, by a predator. In my sophomore year in high school, I became a victim again to sex trafficking by drug dealers. There was an exchange that went on. I was brought into this home under the guise of just let's go get some drugs. And I was like, okay, sure, why not? So I went, and they locked the door, and I was basically coerced to go into this back room and raped and given drugs when I was done being raped. And the drug dealer straight up said, you keep this up, you keep getting. And it was a huge bag. I mean, I was shocked. I was, already like disassociated, but I had what I came for. And basically it was like, if you keep coming back and doing this, you'll keep getting those drugs. And so I lost myself in that moment. I truly lost a part of my soul in that exchange. But I went deeper and deeper into that instead of crying out for help until I just got so reckless. My dad started putting two and two together because I was just so careless. I lied ridiculously. It just became very obvious. And it was actually my stepmother at the time who was like, your daughter is straight up lying to you. You need to go find her. Because I had skipped school. I was off with friends and older boys. So he finally caught me red-handed. And that was both a divine intervention, but it was also, I didn't get the care and attention that I truly needed. He put me on lockdown. I was basically on house arrest. But I didn't come out and tell him exactly what was going on. Of course, I was terrified for him to find out everything that I was doing. I had so much shame, guilt, condemnation, you name it. I was experiencing it as at this point, 15-year-old girl. And 6 months after this hardcore lockdown, I ended up moving with my mom to a small town in the DFW area where I'm currently at. That's Dallas, Fort Worth. I forget, everybody's not from here. So Dallas, Fort Worth area, the Metroplex, but I was in a rural city. It was very small. And the prevalent drug of choice in that city was meth. And I went in headfirst into that drug and got severely addicted to that as well. And to keep this very condensed, basically I graduated in high school 17 years old. And once I became an adult, I moved out immediately in with this boy, basically a drug home, and just perfect storm for me to go into the full-blown commercial sex industry. And so I was pretty much in and out of that from 17 to 24. And that was 2014. I met who is now my husband, just by happenstance. He wasn't like a John. He wasn't trying to buy me or anything like that. I was invited to go have a drink with a friend at a bar, and he was my bartender. And he showed respect and honor and looked me in my eyes and told me I was beautiful and just all the normal stuff, that we should experience. I was experiencing it. It was so weird for me, and it was so awkward for me, but it truly is all that it took for me to see my worth and to go, oh my gosh, I deserve more in life. If this man could give me that kind of love and attention, just meeting me, I can only imagine what else I could possibly, what are the possibilities? It gave me hope. And so I clawed my way out of the life once we met. I left 2 traffickers at that time, one of which tried to kill me. But by the grace of God, I was able to to basically have a clean cut out of the life, which is very abnormal for that space, and start a new life. And for me, that looked like a grueling process, and I'm still walking that journey of healing here 7 years later. I would say, so from 2014 to 2018, it was straight up abuse. It was crazy. My husband and I were trying to figure out life. Married in the midst of those years, but in 2018 I hit my true rock bottom, to where I sought out something outside of myself to find healing, and I began on this journey with Jesus, and I went to Celebrate Recovery. That's the program that I first went into to find healing. And then since then I've done probably 25 modalities, and I start a new one in 2 weeks. I'm doing somatic trauma therapy. I'm doing 10 sessions. I'm really excited about that, to see how that works for me. But that's my story in a nutshell. It's a lot. So thanks for letting me share.
Awesome. That is a survivor story, if you ask me. I mean, we all, while I'm listening attentively, and I do have questions about, overall, when you're a young person, we were talking earlier about how subtle these perpetrators are. So in your situation, although if you take it back to when you were going to the college parties, everybody was going to, they're drinking, they're doing all of these things. But as a young person, were you curious to say, hey, I want to try a drink? What made you say, you were going to do what everybody else was doing? Because you were so young.
Sure. So I think for me, I had already started dabbling in drinking alcohol with my older sister at a neighbor's house. I didn't particularly like it. I didn't enjoy the taste per se, but I liked the feeling. It gave me a sense of confidence. And there was a boy at the time in the room that I had a crush on, and it actually gave me the confidence to approach him and talk to him. And so it was this sense of a alter ego. And it actually became something I identified with. Like I gave my alter ego a name, and I know in society and culture that's actually seen as like cool or fun or whatever. And people try to normalize this thing, but if I will, it's a very spiritual thing, and it's very dangerous. And I encourage people to like not condone that. However, for me personally, I felt seen when I was in those spaces. When a predator were to approach me, they know this girl is vulnerable, and pretty much I just got to figure out a little bit of where her vulnerabilities are, and just like target that as quickly as possible. And most of the time they know it's love and connection. We all desire that. And so he immediately started like overwhelming me with compliments and making me feel very special. And, I had really bad acne then, but you have beautiful skin. You're so pretty. Like he would go for the thing. It was very easy for him to get me just all melted into his hands. Like didn't take a whole lot for me personally. And I feel like even in today's society, that's even more so easier to do online. I do a lot of education in that space of how easy it is for predators nowadays to learn everything they want to about their victim before they even make first contact with them, by looking at their profile, looking at their page, going through all of their posts that they do, multiple platforms, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, whatever else they have out there nowadays. And they can study them before even making contact. And so it makes it even easier for them to just go straight to the heart of the vulnerability.
Yes.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much for my name is Toya, and I'm also a survivor. And it's just that, just listening to you, because I lost my mother at a young age, and I was raised by my family, moved 4 times. So the predator in my case, later on throughout my course of my life, the predator had approached other people that were close to me that I did not know. And I didn't find that out there was a commonality until my 40s. And that's the scary part. And you hit it on the nose. We were talking earlier before you joined us about policing your children, looking at their phones, looking at what it was. But back then, if you had to work, they were latchkey. I was born in the 70s and I survived all of that. And today, the stories are similar because I've actually been working in the mental health field doing women's groups. So what I did was not disclose. I just know that God got me into this job. I was supposed to be a mental health nurse. I had 2 double degrees going on, but I was meant to be in this field because I got to hear women who were drug addicts, who were looking for commonality. And some of the things that were told is similar to what you're saying. And then later on, I had to get into therapy for myself to understand that it may be a different form, but when there's someone who presents them, there's a representative, I like to call it. There's a representative, but when they do homework on you, they know the triggers, they know what to do. And then you're thinking that you're special. And sometimes if you are in a white collar environment, but they look for those broken ones. And I love to dress because my mother was a fashion designer before she passed. She was young, but I got that from her. I dress for myself. But when people see, oh, she's this and that, no, I had to learn to love myself from the inside out because initially it was someone else buying those things for me, giving me those things that the family wouldn't buy. Then I started working. So once I started working and I had things, I was able to hide what I had because it was a drug dealer buying it for me, unfortunately. So again, that's why we have to stay in tune. So the education piece is very important. So we thank you today for sharing because at times we need to expose so people can see, because again, you came from law enforcement household, educated background. Here I had 2 lives. My mother's family was more bougie. My father, a little different. So I had 2 sides. So again, I'm grateful to have my father. He's in recovery over 20 years. I'm finally establishing a relationship with him. But again, it is a process. So thank you. I don't want to, take the plan if everyone else has something else to say. But yes, it comes in different forms. It doesn't matter what you look like. It's still the same process.
Yeah. Powerful story, Angela. I did have a question for you, which is how much is the authoritarian figures? We were talking about that earlier. So sometimes those people that are in authority are those that can help get you to fall into that grooming situation and all along those lines. So just wondering your take on that, and how can you recognize authorities that might be misusing their power? I've been fortunate enough to have teachers in my life and also some friends that are in law enforcement, but sometimes they are the ones that are doing the grooming and all along those lines. So I was just wondering, how can you recognize some of the warning signals?
Sure. So this is a hot topic right now, especially in the church. So much of this is coming to light in the pastoral care side of things. So I did a training a couple days ago, and that was a very prevalent question because I don't hide my faith and I'm very clear, but that puts off a lot of survivors and even people that do work in this space. So I think it's a very crucial conversation. I can't say that I can give you all the answers, but my take on it is it's pretty. So there's lots of resources. I even have some on my website, arisemylove.com. If you go to my resources page, I have a lot of this conversation laid out in articles and videos and all kinds of things on there. But the primary thing is the red flags are pretty standard across the board with predators. And the very first thing they will do is gain the trust of those that are in charge of the child. So they'll go straight to the parents or the caregivers or the friends or the siblings or the cousins or the aunts, whomever is like surrounding this kid. They'll almost love bomb those people and gain all of their trust. Now, if it's a parent, because we can't take that off the board. Like if the parent's the one exploiting the child, then a figure outside of the home is going to have to recognize this, like within the school system. That's where my heart is to go into and really equip staff and administration within the school system to recognize these things. But anyways, that's a little different situation, but I'm thinking more so authoritative figures like law enforcement or pastoral teams or things like that, coaches, teachers. Those are people that go into those spaces because they have access to children. So they'll gain the trust of everybody around this child before they even tried to go to the child themselves. But they also put themselves in positions of gaining access to children as well. So they can also have a level of trust just by default with that kid. That's going to be the first thing to look for, but there will be this level of, I want access to your kid. So once they gained your trust, or they'll start asking, oh, well, hey, I can give them a ride, or hey, why don't they come over to my house and I can teach them, or let's go on this weekend trip. I can take them camping. It's just bonding. I just want to be a mentor, blah, blah, blah. It usually comes in that way, but I don't know if everybody on this call is spiritual, but for me, I always say we have discernment for a reason. If you have that language, we have the gift of discerning of spirits, and you will have something inside of you just going off. Now, on this call that I did, not everybody was. And so I said, okay, well, you have a gut instinct. Everybody knows that language. Listen to your gut. Your gut will go off. You'll have this. Don't ever, ever discount that feeling. Don't justify it. Don't let people talk you out of it. If you feel something going off, more than likely there's something you need to lean into. And for me, that looks like praying, asking Holy Spirit to reveal something to me, whether it's blatant or not, in a dream. And I mean, I believe in that. And so for me, it makes it easier to operate that way. But for those that are in the secular space, I would just encourage, like, investigate whatever that looks like. Just investigate that feeling, that you're, sit down with that person and ask the hard questions. Don't be scared to have, like, hey, I'm feeling like you're trying to gain access to my kid, like, call him out. I'm very bold in that way. I'm not scared. I'm like David facing Goliath all the time. I just will go up there with my little rock and say, let me try to take this sucker out. And usually when that starts taking place, and unfortunately I had to go through this with both of my children and family members, and so I've lived this, and it is not easy. So I will never sit here and say this process or having to go through this, especially against family members, ever is easy. There's grieving that goes into it. There's double-mindedness that comes in. There's so much. And then you have family members attacking you for wanting to cut somebody off. And it's intense. But I say on that end, those are the red flags. But on the other side of it, what you can do as a parent or a caregiver or a mentor, somebody, if you have access to a child and teaching them, I would say just start a narrative with them directly, teaching them what safe touch, unsafe touch, safe conversations, unsafe conversations, and just opening that narrative with your child so they can recognize if something's happening to them. I think that's the most powerful thing.
Yeah. Speaking of trust and all along those lines, how important is it for you to maintain that trust? Because I know that sometimes when you've been in situations where the trust has been lost, there's that notion that you sometimes have a hard time regaining trust and even bringing back. Because I do know people that have been in abusive relationships, and they sometimes bring that abusive relationship to their new relationships. Because I unfortunately have been a victim of that, where I have been involved with people that have been in abusive relationships. So how did you deal with that, even with your husband and everything?
Sure. We struggle daily. I'm raw and honest in that way. We have good times and we have times where we're like, dang it, we need help. We are struggle busting it. And I always say community is everything. Just have a village, have people around you that you can go to that are safe. Obviously, that's always crucial, safe people. Like I know for me, my mom's not always going to be the best person to go to when I'm having trouble with my husband, because she's always on my side. She's always going to tell me what soothes me and all that. But I know I have my lead pastors at my church who will counsel me and bring him into the picture too, and counsel both of us together, help us individually, but also help us together. But also we have to be on a pursuit of healing individually. And so I am consistently focused on how can I be better in this way? What can I do to better myself? And he's on his same pursuit in a whole different way than I am. And then we are able to come together. But I would say the cornerstone cornerstone to that for us is our faith in Jesus, and always having that to come together with. And as my lead pastor says, it's like I have my individual path, my wife has her individual path, and then we have God, and then that connects us together. And it's just this perfect union. As far as abusive cycles, that's just going to be consistent healing and just pursuing whatever it is that resonates with your spirit to heal. Now, for people outside of you, you don't have control over that. So you can't control what this other person is doing. And so if your spouse or your partner or a friend even, or a leader in your life, if they're displaying abusive behaviors, you can't control that. So I would say you would need to sit and evaluate those relationships. We call it taking inventory, and then saying if they continue down that path, and maybe they say they're going to change and they just never do, you got to pay attention to the actions. You have to come to a decision of saying, okay, I'm going to keep going with this person and know that they're still on their journey of healing and hopefully they'll change one day. Or you can draw a solid line and put a boundary up and say, I'm going to love them from afar. I'm not going to be around this person anymore because it's affecting me negatively. And I've definitely had to sever a lot of relationships because of that. But overall, I would say just heal, whatever that looks like for you. Just keep in pursuit of healing.
Concur on that as a survivor. Sometimes you have to set a healthy boundary,
Yes.
and sometimes folks don't like it. But I love myself more now where I allow people to come in, and I call them magicians. So we laugh in my little circle about that. Someone's going to always put their best foot forward. And that is part of is a form of grooming. And sometimes in relationships and friendships, because you've had that trauma, it's hard for you to be able to voice what it is. But what I do now is I put my hand on my chest, and a discernment that I didn't listen to was a red flag. So now if I put my hand on my chest and my heart's beating, that's God telling me this is not good space. And sometimes you're saying it, and to me it's emotional abuse when you're telling someone and they're constantly trying to change your mind. And when you're a survivor of that, you know what? I'm with you. I'm in a relationship with you. Okay, fine. Just to get through with it. That's not right. Because someone really loves you, they should never trigger you or push you into something that you don't want to do. It's your choice.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter what your relationship is with me. And I think with kids, sometimes if you're in a dysfunctional household and you're doing chores or something like that, I guess that's the older days. We're like, why are we doing this? This is not our house. But one thing that my mom T said, when we cleaned her room, she paid us for it. The house was your chore. I paid the bills. But these are things, if you don't have these conversations with kids, they'll think that I have to for a reward. So from there, that can be a behavior that has to be unlearned. But when you carry that through the course of your life, it may look differently. Because again, you hit it home, you think it's love. So now you're looking for something that you're not getting in your home. And there it equates, oh, I got a nice bag. I have this. But again, I tell people date rape is real. Special Victims Unit is a show. I watched that as a part of my healing, not understanding what I was going through. But sometimes things are in plain sight to talk. We should talk with our kids about those subjects that are hard to talk about, because when there's a latchkey home, you're going to get the information from kids who you think know, but they don't know. Because again, as you said, with the drinking piece, it was an older sister, but you're impressionable. I remember the Lifetime movie, She's Too Young. I don't know if you all saw that movie, She's Too Young. So now I've added that when I do groups, I add that to the women. These are movies that you need to watch. So if you don't have a conversation or your children are watching it in spaces that is not talked about, it can be glorified to think that it's okay. So again, here on the couch, we talk about those issues. And as of now, Dr. Diamond helped me to get through my healing. Sometimes it's hard to go to therapy as people of color. We feel that, oh, you're crazy. No, anybody that's sane and hears stories, we need to heal ourselves. And it's okay to not be okay. So now, thank you for those tips, but I just wanted to hone in on that. You know, it may look different in every household, but again, your discernment is something that we cannot ignore. That's the main thing. Follow it. Follow your gut, because that is a divine intervention that's telling you something's not right. If I walk into a room and I feel this anxiety, those are spirits there. And now I remove myself. I put life into circles. You have your home circle. There's different things. All I did was walk out of that circle back to my safety point. So that's something that I want to share. You are okay not to feel okay in an environment. It's not for you. Move. You grow so you can go.
Yeah. So I have a question also. And this is back to, the younger you. And going back there, the question I have is, did you feel brokenness when your parents divorced? Did you feel the brokenness? And then, how was that a cause of how you went out into the world,
Yeah. So thank you for that question. Thank you so much, everybody, for sharing y'all's story too. I really appreciate and honor that. And I'm sorry, my dog's barking outside. I don't know if you can hear it or not, but she is going to town right now. Anyhow, the best way, like, I had to tap back into that when I was writing my book, and it was actually very, very challenging for me because it's been a while since I had to really tap back into that 10-year-old me. But I would say, did I call it that, or could I even identify or realize it was brokenness? No, absolutely not. What it looked like for me was, it's my fault. What could I have done differently to change it? If I had said this, would they have XYZ? Like, for me, my dad was openly cheating on my mom, and my mom had went off for a travel nurse job to Cape Cod. And while she was gone, it was like a 6-month contract. He was bringing this other woman around and her children, and there was no conversation had. And we all, they're sitting there teaching us the Bible and like scriptures, and we know right from wrong, but yet this is being done right in front of us by our Father. And it's just, it was so conflicting and so bizarre in my own mind. Like, it was already just this unspoken, I don't even know how to really, the best way I can articulate it, honestly, from a raw place, is just like confusion. Like, that was the root of all of it, was like just absolute confusion. I knew it felt gross. I knew it felt wrong. And I knew it wasn't my place to even know about any of this. I didn't have the words to say all that, but it got to a point where my mom had, I think, 2 months left in Cape Cod, and I begged and begged and begged to go with her because I could not stand the feeling of what I felt being in that home, him bringing that woman around and taking us around her family. It was just so strange to me. Finally, they gave me the blessing, and I moved with my mom for a couple of months to Cape Cod. And at this time, I don't think I was even 10 years old yet. I think I was still 9. And there I started experiencing extreme, I think I could call it grief, but I didn't know that's what it was. But I was alone all the time. So neglect and rejection, I was always home alone. And my mom was dealing with the pain of the divorce. Like, she knew it was coming. She didn't know about the woman, and I didn't tell her. So I was holding on to the secret. And my brother was starting to get into drugs. Not my oldest brother, but my second eldest brother was living with her the whole time. So I started witnessing him doing that. She's, coming home drunk. And I heard, so he actually divorced her over email while we were in Cape Cod. And I was in her bed whenever that took place. And so I heard everything. But again, I say all of this to show you, like, I didn't have the radar. I didn't have the language. I didn't have the resources to even process any of this. So it was all happening internally. So yes, I was extremely broken, but as the 10-year-old, like, if I'm giving you the perspective of her, she had no clue what in the world was going on, other than, I feel gross, I feel guilty, I feel lost, and I want love so desperately. I just want my parents to be together, and I want them to show me attention and love. That's it. It was like pretty simple and basic. And I wasn't getting any of that. Instead, it was the complete opposite. I was being neglected. I was not shown any attention. I was going through abuse. They didn't know that. It was just, it was so much for one little person to be able to hold, which led to, when I was around 10 and 11, extreme rebellion. I just started seeking out anything that brought excitement. And for me, that looked like just hanging out with the rebellious crowd, doing everything I wasn't supposed to do, but be secretive about it.
Yeah. And I can see that, the little you wouldn't know how to identify it with the words.
Yeah.
But the words that will spin you to where you are now is resiliency.
Yes.
So now we're looking at, I want to talk about your book. How did you get to that place that you named it Unbroken, a survivor's story? Because that's just another word for resiliency. You just use the word unbroken. So Angela, help us, understand how you got to this title.
Sure. So I actually, again, I might use some words that some people aren't familiar with, but I believe in the prophetic. I don't know if everybody knows what that means, but it's essentially, in a nutshell, I believe that God can speak to me, and I believe that he gives me vision. Just like in the Bible times, I feel and believe that we can experience that here on this earth right now in this day. So as I was taking a shower one day, I got this vision of, I had learned about this art approach that the Japanese do, and it's called kintsugi. And it's where they take ceramic that has been broken and they put it back together with gold, and they seal it back together, and it becomes more valuable and more beautiful. And so this image started coming into my mind as I was already kind of almost done with my book. So the way I came up with the title, this is it. I was trying to think of the cover and the title kind of all at the same time. And he gave me the vision of that kintsugi, and he said, "You are my masterpiece." And I lost it, of course. I'm getting emotional now just thinking of it. And he showed me how I was broken into all these pieces, and he was putting me back together with gold. And that was almost representative of Holy Spirit. And I saw an image of me, like my face being like having a bunch of cracks in it, sealed up with gold. So if you look at my cover, it's that. I designed it. So he gave me that download, and I was able to design that. But then as I was praying into this, I just heard, "You are unbroken." And it's through Holy Spirit that you're unbroken. And 100% resiliency is everything. And it's so incredible how the human spirit is so resilient, even in children. How resilient I was back then to even just by default know how to help myself and how to survive and get through all of those dynamics that I was thrown into out of my control. And I honor that child so much. I've gone through so much inner child healing. I've gone back to each age that I experienced and visualized myself as now walking up to her, and the most emotional thing I've ever gone through, but visualizing me walking up to that little girl and just loving on her and encouraging her and telling her she did a good job. And you're so good.
Yeah.
Like you're so good. So
yeah. That's awesome.
Thank you. You just gave me
awesome.
some forgiveness for myself. Thank you so much for sharing that for anyone listening to today, because sometimes we don't know, but you too, we agree. And I think that anyone else hears that you have to forgive yourself. And sometimes folks say that, "Why are you going down a rabbit hole? Why do we keep going back down the rabbit hole? Don't go there. Don't go there." Then how am I supposed to grow? Or anyone is supposed to grow if we don't take those roots and break them? Because a trigger is what I feel the enemy uses to bring us back there. That's what it is. So thank you for sharing it. And I think that anyone that is listening to this presentation today will understand that we are here for a purpose. The Bible says our steps are ordered. We did a presentation. It was all things women, and we talked about that. She opened up with the mental health piece. I provided my story, but everything now is hand in hand, as it is Women's History Month. We are women. We are resilient. We are fighters. We are survivors. And may I ask you, what is your zodiac sign? I'm curious.
I was born in June, June 22nd. Sorry, I don't really partake in that, but I will say I'm a Cancer.
Okay. Because sometimes I look at numbers, 365 days. I had this book that I read. It's called Be Still and Know. Have you ever heard of it? Be Still and Know?
I know that scripture. I don't think I know that book though.
But basically, I read that every day. And it starts with a scripture. And then from there, it gives you a little anecdotal, and there's a prayer. And I'm going to show you. This is the book. Be Still and Know.
Pink is my
And
color.
yes, mine too. And basically, the butterfly room is pretty much, you know what a butterfly does? It morphs into something else. And when I won something, they called me the black butterfly. And I said, that wasn't by accident. It wasn't by accident. Because we are vessels. We talked about earlier in John 3:16 of how God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten son. And we need vessels out here to know that we are not broken. And thank you today for this confirmation for anyone that's listening on the airwaves, because the resilience is what gets us through. And if you're not a spiritual person, and if you don't hear your story and what you're sharing, this is what it is. Sometimes we need a vessel for us to believe. Because at times people look at us, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? But no, thank you. We have to start at the root. Each trauma needs to be healed. And if those traumas are not healed, we're going to catapult back into that. Right? Dr.
Yes,
Naya?
absolutely. And I always a lot of people refer to it as onion layers. I hear that a lot. I hear that reference a lot. But as I'm actually writing book 2, I haven't even told you this, Dr. Piercy, or Dr. Diamond. Sorry.
That's okay.
After our workshop, I was inspired to make that a book. So I am writing book 2. It's called The Life After Trauma. And it's developing. I actually have a publisher for this one. So I'm really excited.
Well, your name sounds similar to my book. So the point is, I definitely need your information, because we were trying to do an anthology and would love for you to join, because I've been trying to do this, but through distractions.
Yeah.
But everything, you see a congruent attitude.
Yeah.
My pastor talks about a congruent attitude, which is daily work.
Yeah.
Daily work. That means that you are so close to birthing what it is, because you're going to have distractions keep coming at you.
Oh,
That's when I know. And I keep seeing myself on Tamron Hall's desk, couch. That's all I keep having is vision.
Yeah, girl.
I keep having this vision, and I say that if I can't see it, I can't do it. Do you feel that?
I
your
do.
Discernment? And if you can't see it, I can't birth it. I have an idea. Yeah. And a lot of times when you meditate, people don't understand what meditation is. Right. That means it's time with God. Right. You're sitting there and you have these things, and I talk. Then I get a confirmation in my mind if I should do it. Then what I do is I'll vet it to a person outside of myself, to see if they're in agreement.
Yes.
And then from there, that's when it grows. Life after. There is a life after traumatic events.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm going to be writing about. So yes.
So Angela, so tell me about you writing this book. So just give us a little synopsis of what you're getting ready to write.
So, well, you sat through the workshop, so you got a deep dive into the whole content of it, but it's actually morphing. Of course, we know as when we start digging into something more in depth, and I think, I'm a research nerd. And so I am digging into all things healing after a life of trauma. But all of it is personal experience. So I'm writing this from I went through this. This is my experience. So as I'm writing this, I'm talking about each modality, and I go in depth. I write out literally, this is how it works, A to Z. And then this was my experience with it. And this is my story with that modality. And this is how I experienced. And this is what it did for me. And this is how it helped me and why. And then this is real life experience. This is how I applied it in my life. So each modality I'm doing that with. So the subtitle is a guidebook for survivors of trauma. So it's literally going to be a roadmap. I use that language too throughout the book. It's a roadmap. It's something like my introduction says, I wish somebody put this in my hand when I began my healing journey in 2018. I wish I would have had this level of direction, because when I started, I had absolutely no clue what to do, where to go, who to ask for, all the things. So I think over the last 7 years, God has just been putting tools in my tool belt. So now I can pull them all out, put them in this book. And I think this is going to be the first of that curriculum I was telling you about. So I feel like after I write this book, I'm going to be able to curate curriculum for different people groups. So like church leadership, this is how we can serve survivors in the church. Mental health care workers, this is how we could apply this in your space. I've done tons of consulting work with y'all's field, and I love it. Like, it's one of my favorite fields to consult in from a survivor standpoint, writing curriculum specifically. So I've done continuing education consulting for mental health care workers to serve survivors of human trafficking. But anyway, so it's in that space. And then also a curriculum I'm kind of forcing for law enforcement, of course. And then of course, organizations who serve, through advocacy. So there's different realms that this can morph into. And there's all kinds of collaborations that I'll be, seeking out whenever I get to that point. But, the book itself, is going to look a lot like a guidebook or a roadmap, if you will, on all the modalities that exist in our world for people who endure trauma. But I think what I'm going to go back and do, and I haven't done this yet, but it's kind of a download that's been happening in my prayer time lately, is actually have a section fully devoted to trauma-informed training. So teaching people what trauma is, what it looks like in the body, and just pretty much paint a picture of what trauma is, because a lot of people just have no clue what it truly is. True. They automatically think war veterans or a car accident, actual trauma, things that people relate trauma or PTSD to. And a lot of people don't realize I'm actually experiencing PTSD from childhood abuse or whatever, or a death of a family member. I mean, there's so many things that can cause the trauma. So just kind of taking some time in the beginning of the book to just do some of that.
Okay.
Yes.
Great.
Agree. Go ahead, Tori.
Yeah, I just had a question. So now as a parent, so now on the other end, now would you say that you are hypersensitive, or how is that looking for you as a survivor? Just to share, just anyone that's listening.
I'm sorry. At the beginning of that one more time, my son needed me to open a bar for him.
No, that's okay. Just any tools for anyone that's listening that's a trauma survivor, because I know sometimes we can be a little hard on ourselves. Yes. So is there anything that you can share with anyone listening who is a parent and who's actively, working on peeling their onion? Anything that you can share, some tools to help them throughout so they don't feel that they're less? Anything you can share that helps you to get through your days? Yes.
Absolutely. So you reminded me, I started to tell y'all about the onion thing. Okay, so I used to use that as a metaphor all the time, but as I start writing this book, and like, I'm a design person, so I love designing covers before I even, anyways, I was brought to a tangled up ball of yarn, and I was like, oh my gosh, that is way better of a metaphor in my mind, what trauma actually looks like, because you can start pulling and it'll pull out real good. Then all of a sudden you get a knot, and it's like, okay. And then, so you have to sit there with that knot and take some time to really pick at it and unravel it. And then you get to another point where it's like, okay, it's pulling. And then boom, another knot. So that in my mind was a way better visual for people to understand truly what it looks like to heal from, at least I would say, complex trauma. Complex trauma is a little different from a one-time traumatic event. Yeah. So healing from complex trauma is like that tangled up, or even like jewelry. That's even worse. I would say mine's look more like the jewelry y'all tangle, because that's almost impossible. But anyways, my advice is number one, you're not alone. Like anytime somebody's going through anything, the first thing the enemy will try to do is isolate you and make you feel like you're the only one enduring this or going through it. And so the first word of encouragement I could ever provide anybody is knowing like you are not the only one going through this. There's a whole community of people out there going through the same thing. And my advice is to find that community and plug in with it as much as you can. And for me, that looked like Celebrate Recovery. I feel like that's a wonderful program. It's a great stepping stone to get started because it's structured. It has a structured platform to it to start putting language to healing. It gave me verbiage to start connecting in my own brain of how to heal. I don't think it's a stopping place by any means. I think some people do get stuck there. I don't think it's a stopping place though. And there's so much more after that. So that's why I'm writing my book, because there's so much more out there. We got to share it to people, but find a community. Like community is everything. So for me, it was church, a healthy church. And what I say in my book is like, don't be afraid to trial certain things. The first place you walk into might not be the one for you. So you can almost like interview your church, like go in there, fill it out, see if you like the people, see if it resonates with you. And I feel like when you walk in, you'll feel at home. And when you have that comforting feeling of I'm at home, that's your place. And so it took me 3 years to find that. And so finally, but I walked into that place and I was like, oh my gosh, this is my home. Man, the healing that started taking place between me and God was so incredible. Every time I walked foot into that church, I would be a bawling mess in the corner, just me and God healing, just in the corner. It wasn't anything that anybody was doing. However, that community came around me like nobody else and just loved on me where I was at and brought me through the darkest valleys I've ever walked through in my life. So community is everything, and not isolating and not feeling like you have to be alone through this. So it could look like a small group, like you were mentioning, like a small group of survivors. When I made Survivor Connections in 2020, so like 5 years ago, I was already years into my healing. I finally got a survivor advocate. That was a game changer because I didn't really have to say anything. She just got it. And so we could just connect.
Hey, Angela, it's interesting you mentioned community and everything along those lines. It's interesting you mentioned community because my brother actually just released a video on Facebook. I don't know if April even saw it or if Dr. Toya saw it. And he's not the survivor in the sense of what y'all are talking about, but it's, survivor is all kinds of different survivor journeys. And my brother has actually got MS. So he released a video where he was talking about that nature of the community and how he first learned about MS from our aunt when she was diagnosed with it and eventually passed of it after having it for 25 or 30 years. But in his testimonial that he put out there on Facebook, he talked about that need for community because he's a part of the Slingshot Club. And if you follow like those three-wheeler kind of cars, I call them the Batmobile kind of cars. He's the co-founder of one of our local chapters here and everything. But his message was that he was going to survive. He was going to be a survivor no matter what he was going through and all along those lines. And that he had a support group behind him, whether that was his Slingshot Club, whether that was our family, meaning the family that I am part of because he's my only brother and everything, or his nephews. But he also talked about how he had to learn to guide the community and everything, because he also had this notion of he sometimes is afraid to go out in public because he doesn't want to inconvenience people. He was even talking about going out with his fiance, and he didn't want to go on the trip to New Orleans because he was afraid that some of the accommodations that they would have to make would inconvenience her and everything. And I don't think that she would have that same kind of feeling. He doesn't think that she would have that same kind of feeling. But it's just interesting to hear you talk about the need to have community, because that was the core of what his message was. So whether you're dealing with a physical ailment or a element, something as serious as what we're talking about, which is human trafficking, it's that community that can help us get through whatever the problem is. And I didn't need to go off on a MS sidetrack and everything, but I just think that your message of community is a very powerful one that resonates with a lot of people, because even he talked about it in his testimony, and y'all can look up Y Malik Ali on Facebook and you will see his testimony. You can also go on my Facebook because I posted it on my own Facebook as well. But it's a powerful message that he gave out there to let people know that, to reach out to people that can help you in the healing journey, whatever the healing is, whether it's healing from sexual trauma or whether it's healing from physical ailments or whether it's healing from even emotional abuse and things along those lines. So sorry to get on a little bit of a preaching, but y'all kind of like touch my heart with that notion about community.
No, that's
What
so
it is
powerful.
finding your people.
Yeah. No, it's okay. I was gonna say the same thing. So I think it's so amazing, and it truly, I think for those that are going to watch this, needed to hear that. And so I don't apologize. I think it was beautiful, and I think it's so eye-opening to people that have been in those spaces of isolation to see that, okay, this isn't just like I may have never been abused before or whatever, but everybody goes through something. Like our human experience here on this earth, we're going to endure some level of trauma. It's just part of it. We know that we're going to struggle. It's just part of it. It's biblical. We know that. However, the Lord created the church for a reason, and that the church is the body, the people that He created, and all that to say, as you were sharing that, I was thinking about how I'm just thinking, I don't know how to fully articulate it, and I kind of lost my train of thought. But basically, I just want to say that I think there's power in numbers, and we know that where two or more are gathered, there's one in the midst, and then a three-strand cord cannot be broken. And so that those are just some biblical references to knowing why community is so important. Oh, it came back to me. So the phrase that I say all the time is, oftentimes community is what broke us, or community is what hurt us, but the only way to heal is through community. So it's interesting how that works, and how the enemy will try to come in and distort and skew all of that. But as a word of encouragement to everybody out there, just know that, yes, people hurt people, but free people, and healed people, heal people. So there are people out there who are good, who have the heart of Jesus truly, and want to be the hands and feet, and truly connect and become a family, a true family. And it can be spiritual. I have tons of spiritual sisters and brothers now, and even a spiritual mother and father who's taken me under their wing and truly showed me what it's like to be in a loving family.
No, I can understand that and everything, and I agree with you on that. And the church family is very important. My brother actually goes to a Methodist church, and I think he's a deacon, if I remember correctly. So that church family is very important to him as well. Unfortunately, and particularly in the sexual abuse space, I think definitely Toya kind of alluded to it earlier and everything along those lines. We can sometimes get into church hurt as well. So that's something we also got to be careful with and deal with as well, because unfortunately we know that it can be part of the healing process, and it doesn't matter what your church is, because I consider myself more spiritual than religious. I think me and Dr. Diamond have that in common, because I've had this conversation with Dean and everything. But I have friends that are definitely devout Christians, devout Muslims, and even some that are into Eastern religions and everything else. And one of the things that I've learned a long time ago is that most of the religions have one thing in common, which is a belief in a higher power, a belief in being connected to the most divine, and all along those lines. And I definitely think that that's important. I even love going outside and looking at nature, because a lot of times I think that we ignore the things that are simple in life that can help us in our healing journey as well. I mean, something as simple, and this may sound corny, as seeing a rabbit or a squirrel go running, or even seeing some birds kind of courting with each other, can put some simple joy in my life. And I think that we need to pay attention to those things as well. I'm sure you do that also, Angela, and everything. But I just want to know your takes on that, because I think that we sometimes get too caught up in the division that goes on in society and the divide, when a lot of times we have more in common than we have that separates us.
Okay.
And
before we move, hold on one second, Toya. Before we move forward, I just want everybody to know we're getting closer to the end of the show. So I'm going to have you ask Angela your last questions, if you have them, and then we'll get to our closing comments. Okay. So Toya, you can go.
Well, yes, it was a pleasure to meet you today, Angela. I have to go right now, but this is very informative information. I thank you for sharing that with those who are listening today. And we have to find our people. That's really what it is. And again, everything you said, I agree with. And you have to have a congruent attitude with all of that and understand that if God brings you to it, he'll bring you through it. And that's what I say. And you have to get fed. So I just wanted to say thank you for joining us today. I have to leave, but it was a pleasure and I will be in touch. Have a blessed day, everyone.
All right. Take care. All right, Mark, do you have any parting words before we give Angela the parting words before we leave the couch?
Unfortunately, I've got to leave the couch as well, but Angela, though I was bouncing in and out, but I did hear most of your story, and I'll go back and catch the parts that I missed and everything. But I think it's a very powerful story, and I've had the pleasure, as I was telling Dr. Diamond, of interviewing others that have gone through similar woes and everything along those lines, whether it's, a matter of fact, I just interviewed a woman yesterday who literally, she's now in her 50s or 60s age range, but her mother literally stole her boyfriend when she was a teenager, and she's still dealing with that hurt and all along those lines. So it's a matter of us coping with the hurts that we have to deal with and learning from those hurts and not letting them define us. Because even my brother, when he was talking about MS, he was talking about that MS doesn't define him, but in some ways it does define him because he has to do some adjustments and everything. So we need to understand what we've gone through and how we got through it, but don't let it be a hindrance to us, and don't let it stop us from getting the rewards that we need. And I guess my question to you really quickly is, how do you do that? How do you manage to get the rewards that you know you are destined for, even though you went through those powerful moments of hurt through the whole sexual trafficking battle?
Yeah. So I heard a woman say one time, your pitfall will become your platform. And it has stuck with me for years. And I see that as my truth. And I am able to find so many common threads throughout the Bible and what people experienced, particularly Joseph. I really resonate with his story. And also, like, House of David is out on Prime now, and I've been watching it, and I just really resonate with his character and just seeing how those underdogs and the people that the enemy was trying to take out and destroy, how the Lord truly wants to use those kinds of people to raise them up into a place of influence for a reason. And I genuinely I believe that with the core of my being, that I went through what I went through because my purpose on this earth is to defeat that stronghold on this earth through my story, through the power of my testimony and the blood of the Lamb, and sharing the gospel through my testimony. And in doing all of that, I'm able to bring heaven on earth. And I through everything that I've been through, I just come back to that, and that keeps me very grounded, and it keeps me. So I guess all that to say, my faith. My faith is what allows me to have that solid ground and that unwavering experience. And now when I have people attacking me, for whatever, I get them daily for my faith primarily, but also my story, but I hold on the promises of God. There's so many out there, but the one I hold on to the most is my reward in heaven, in my eternal life. So it brings me great joy.
That's great. And that's awesome. And that is something someone will resonate with you and hear what you're saying today of how you can get yourself back to being grounded. When we feel like we're floating, we feel like we're broken into pieces, and instead of feeling like a whole person, but your spirituality, as you talked about, brings you back to become a whole person where that alignment come into place. Part of one of my mottos is, just the alignment of the mind, body, and spirit. That's one of my mottos. The second one is peace, love, and tranquility, because that's the same thing, but just in different words. So we have to know how to resonate with that. How do we go back into alignment? But like you said, having that spiritual connection with God, having a higher belief into something, because everybody is not always going to be a believer, but if you're a spiritual person, you're going to connect with something, and then that's something grounded. And that's what I'm hearing from what you're saying today. So again, Unbroken, a survivor's story. Look for Angela's book. So Angela, could you tell them where they can get your book before we end for today?
Absolutely. So that website that's scrolling on the bottom, arisemylove.com. If you visit that website, I have links to purchase my book. That's the link where you'll find my podcast, all the resources that I offer, any speaking engagements I'll be doing, so on and so forth. So that's like the best place to go find me. I even have my social media platforms plugged into that website. So if you want to go follow me I'm primarily on Facebook and TikTok and Instagram. Hopefully soon I'll be on YouTube more. But anyways, that's the best place to go and to find me.
All right. Well, you know what? We thank you so much for joining the couch. And just a couple of parting words for today from you.
Sure. I think I've already said it, but I'm going to reiterate it. And that is, you are not alone. You're not alone in any journey that you're on right now, whether it has to do with healing from trauma, if it's life's hurts, habits, and hangups, whatever it may be. I just want to encourage you to know that you're not the only person on this earth going through it, and that you do have a tribe out there. And I want to encourage you to take the time to go out there and plug into that community, that tribe, and find your people, because it will change your life to have others that get you, that understand you, and that resonate with you. And again, I just want to say that there is power in Jesus. And I would be remiss not to say that. So I just want to just blast that out there. If you don't know who Jesus is, start figuring it out, start researching it, or you're welcome to reach out to me on my website and I can share the good news with you.
All right. Well, we thank you again for joining us on the couch, and we hope to talk to you again in the future when you are working on your second book, to bring you back and just to talk to you about what's new with you and what is going on in your community and the things that you're doing to help your community change, especially because of such a traumatic experience that you had in your life, and helping those that are as well. So again, thank you very much, Angela Thorne, for coming on the couch with us today. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. And thank you again for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right. All right. Take care. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on the couch today. We thank you so much for joining us and participating in this wonderful topic with Angela Thorne today. We really enjoyed her. Thank you all for joining us today on the couch. And as always, peace, love, and tranquility. And I hope you learned something today about human trafficking, how to help those that are around you, especially our younger kids. We have to make sure that we're protecting our younger kids and our teenagers as well. So remember, we're here to provide vital content to you all. And once again, take care. Have an awesome weekend. We love you here on the couch. Take care.
Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of On the Couch. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation and found it as enlightening and inspiring as I did. Remember, the stories and experiences we share here are just the beginning of a much larger journey. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, look for the notification on Facebook, and find us on your favorite podcast platform. Your support helps us keep the conversation going and reach more listeners just like you. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and keep the dialogue alive. Peace, love, and tranquility. Take care, and we'll see you on the couch.